Hey everybody, Mono Sanbonani, hello, how's it? This is Big Daily Liberty and you're watching the Friday edition of The Daily Friend. That's right, you've had a whole week to consume news, opinion, analysis on the Daily Friend website. A reminder of that website, it's dailyfriend.co.za. I hope you're enjoying it. We do put out awesome content for you guys. I'm in studio, of course, with the lads from Wednesday. I think we recorded on Wednesday, is that correct? Nicholas Lorimer, of course, is a writer and research and analyst here at the IRR. Nicholas, good morning, how are you?
Morning, Zidle, I'm very well.
And of course, we have I'll still call him a new face because it's his first week, essentially. Herman Pretorius, a writer and analyst here at the IRR. Herman, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Zidle.
Fantastico. Okay, guys, it's a Friday edition. What we do is usually just recap quickly and we breeze through the week that was. Let's start at the top insofar as where we left it off on Wednesday. Boris Johnson, he's officially the Prime Minister of the UK. First speech in Parliament, some interesting things came out of that, Herman.
Yeah, no, definitely. I must say, the one thing that one can deduce from his first 2 days as Prime Minister, it goes from his first speech in front of Downing Street's famous front door, his cabinet reshuffle, his Commons performance. The one thing I think he clearly wants to inject is a sense of optimism and a sense of energy. I think that's quite clearly what he's aiming for, just to say that things have changed. This is a new broom, a Touslehad broom perhaps, but a new one. And the interesting thing for me about this first few days was the cabinet reshuffle. Well, it's not a reshuffle, it's the composition new government. It was quite brutal. But I think the brutality of removing so many sitting ministers and inserting so many new ones, I don't think it's just about him wanting the team he wants. Although I think that's definitely a big part of it. I think there's also an element of the brutality for brutality's sake, to show decisiveness, to show new direction, to show energy. So
he's in charge, essentially. Nick, interesting character though, because this would be my view, right? There was a lot of the usual sort of gnashing of teeth, especially from the left and, the social justice warrior types, and a quick rush to sort of paint him as being akin to Donald Trump. So, in other words, the same angst and criticism that we directed Trump, that's leftists talking, of course, I mean, their first person voice here, they all direct in the exact same criticism towards Boris Johnson. But listening to that maiden speech, or even the snippets of it, I didn't get a sense of you can draw parallels between these two guys. They seem very different.
No, not at all. I mean, he's nothing like Donald Trump in almost every single way. He was, boasting about fairly centrist policies that the Tories had and about how the Tories had supported the NHI and NHS, sorry. That's an obvious. The NHS, the Tories had run the NHS better than Labour, and he's a
living wage.
Yeah, the living wage, which he said was a Tory policy, or they had done better than Labour ever could. So he's not Donald Trump at all. And it's just laziness that's getting people to compare the two together.
Absolutely.
And I have to add to that, Mike Gapes, a former Labour MP who now sits on the opposition bench still, but no longer as Labour. I'm not quite sure whether he's independent or still the Change UK or whatever their name is this week. But he tweeted that this is such an ultra-right government. And that's just absolute nonsense. Firstly, you have the descendant of Turkish and Hungarian immigrants being the Prime Minister. You have the son of a Pakistani cab driver being the Chancellor of the Exchequer. You have Priti Patel, the Home Secretary. And then you have Dominic Raab, who is also of immigrant extraction, and those are the four great officers of state.
Absolutely.
So this is surprisingly for if this is an alt-right government, they're terribly bad at being alt-right.
It's also marked by an absence of animus towards immigration.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's been dumbfounding to see just how lazy the analysis and the rhetoric is online. In fairness, it is online, and people don't really make much of an effort to provide solid analysis. That's why you watch the Daily Friend show and you go to the Daily Friend website at dailyfriend.co.za. But guys, let's quickly just breeze past this issue to one which is linked and and maybe sort of occupied my thinking for the week. I've been putting out some purposefully provocative tweets this week with a specific focus on the issue of immigration, not immigration, but immigration, South Africans leaving. Now, we do know there's a myriad of reasons as to why people leave, crime, unemployment, race-based policies which essentially target minorities in this country. And this is the bit that triggers, most social justice warriors in terms of the responses I've seen. Like, no, they don't. Yes, they do. Hence people leave. But also just, the idea of greener pastures, people seeking greener pastures because they're skilled and there's better opportunities overseas. The responses to this tweet, and I think they're in excess of about 100 retweets and somewhere close to 200 comments to these at the last count, are people essentially, because I asked two questions, who do you know who has immigrated and what was their skill set? Because I wanted to gauge people who are reading the responses to get a sense of just how highly skilled those people are and how we're essentially subsidizing other countries, their training requirements by giving them skilled South Africans. I'm going to pose the question to you guys too, and then we'll have a chat about it. Who have you guys known, and you don't have to name names, of course, just like, who have you known, a number of people who've left, and what were the sort of skill sets that were departing our shores?
Well, every single one of my friends, I think, has got a long-term plan to leave the country.
Yeah.
And they range from sort of video editors to bankers to IT programmers. And I think this is the defining feature, actually, for most middle-class South Africans, and regardless of race, for that matter, that they see the young people in their communities leaving for overseas.
Yeah, and for the longest time, my family had been quite set on not leaving. We always considered that to be a bit of an extreme step. I think it's a typical middle of the road South African mindset is, come on, South Africans are still a great bunch, this is still a great country. But I can't lie, in the past year, there have been active conversations about Plan Bs and Plan Cs, looking at, what's Mauritius doing to attract foreign investment? What's Botswana doing to attract foreign investment? And the sad thing is, through all these conversations, in my family at least, there's this repetition of we don't want to leave our continent. We're really genuinely looking at African alternatives, not international alternatives.
You raise a very important point, because one of the replies I got was from a black chap who is a accountant, he says. And he says, look, I've been looking at Rwanda as an option. I mean, it's been in the news as, being pro-market, more market-friendly at least, same thing, but anyway. Seeking investment, therefore, in his calculation, obviously looking for the skills to drive all of that. It's not a racial thing, is it?
No, and it's not a third world thing. It's not a thing. We just want to escape this continent of darkness. No, we want to go where opportunities are available. And you mentioned Rwanda. Uganda is an excellent place for entrepreneurship. If you look at entrepreneurship in Uganda, and you're an entrepreneur, you're a software designer, there are so many options, and it doesn't have to be that way. The options can be here, and the options can be spread out right across the continent.
With unemployment this high and economic growth this low, it's no wonder. That is the main driver.
Absolutely. Just one more point before we move on. On the show, we had a conversation, and I'll link that particular show at the end with Ian Cruikshanks. Ian was talking about the free trade agreement, which has just been signed and is about to kick off. And in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, hey man, if you have South Africans leaving and searching for better opportunities, it wouldn't be too much for other African countries to see that and basically create the sort of environment that can attract South Africans. Something as simple as providing safety and security, a reasonable amount of service delivery in terms of basics. Property rights, which is a big thing on the African continent. In other words, we're moving in the opposite direction of where actually most African countries are moving, in other words, securing them. And if you open up the borders and, the movement of goods and people is becoming easier, why shouldn't Africa benefit from skilled personnel? Nick?
I think Africa is set to benefit. The main difference between us and Africa is we may be far ahead of them in terms of what we have already, wealth and stability and all these things. But the trend in a lot of African countries, not all, but a lot, places like Ghana, for example, or to a certain degree Rwanda, even though it's got some political problems,
Yes.
is that it's moving in the right direction. And so it's only a matter of time before South Africa really starts to look like one of the lower ranked options.
Absolutely.
We're quite far ahead, but it's not going to last forever.
Yeah. And speaking of Ian, I spoke to him earlier this week, and in his typically, sage-like manner, he came to me and he said, "Did I know that since the beginning of the year, there's been a net equity outflow of 45 billion rands out of this country. That's money talking and going somewhere else. It's investors looking at South Africa and thinking, well, we don't want our money there. If the money's not here, the jobs won't be here. And it's just this process that really can be halted with sensible policy that really can free the African tigers. But it's just the opportunities are going by unused.
And I must stress, because people sort of listen to this and go, oh, but, it's only the higher end individuals. It's only the whites. That's the usual refrain I've received from those who sort of gnash their teeth when they see, it includes skill sets even such as nurses, plumbers, artisans, who are being snapped up by the rest of the world. And, at some point as South Africans, we need to sort of take a step back and go, guys, something's seriously wrong here. Not because there's some sort of racial element to it. I think it's gone beyond that. South Africans are clearly finding it very difficult to stay in this country, to make an income from the income build savings, from those savings buy options.
And the other thing we've seemed to have forgotten to talk about because it's so ubiquitous is crime.
Yep.
A lot of these other countries in Africa, they're still not quite as economically developed. They don't have the same kind of infrastructure. Their politics is always sometimes a little bit more rocky, but they don't have the same level of violent crime that we do. And that's a significant factor in pulling people away.
Last thought on this, because it actually really did consume my thinking for the week. If you look at Twitter, and again, Twitter's a poor gauge of this, but just indulge me for a moment. And you look at some of the big South African corporations, they're seeing this too. I mean, Game, for example, Massmart. I saw a tweet by them this week basically saying, we're launching the Kenya Nairobi store. And if you really follow, other South African corporates, they've been moving into Africa quite aggressively, and they're showing good numbers there. Is there space, and I ask this just to open up a bit of a chat, is there space for young South African entrepreneurs to essentially emulate the big corporates and say, look, it may be difficult to start a business here, but let me see what the rest of Africa is looking like?
I think it might be possible, but there are still significant roadblocks. A lot of African countries still have these problems with corruption and overregulation. And so I think it's coming, but we might not necessarily be there yet, especially for someone who's desperately trying to establish their foothold in the business space.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with Nick on that one. Oh, that's a famous line from British politics. I agree with Nick. Hashtag 2010 elections. But to add to that, capitalism is based on the solving of societal problems. You see a problem, you solve it, your society is thankful they pay money for your solution.
That's right.
And the fact that Africa has so many problems is sometimes, it overshadows the fact that Africa also has an incredible amount of problem solvers. The problem is these barriers that are put up by bad policy, by insecure property rights, by crime, those kind of things, really, really making it difficult for Africa to solve its own problems.
That being said, there's been recent moves by the AU, which is potentially the first good thing the AU's ever actually achieved, to lower trade barriers and movement barriers across Africa. Now, whether it's actually going to be implemented, a lot of the countries have signed onto it now, but that doesn't necessarily mean they'll actually implement it. But if a sort of free trade zone and a free movement zone was implemented across a lot of Africa, you might see significant upticks in economic prosperity. Because once those barriers and some of those regulations are gone, there's going to be a lot of unlocking of potential. In a few decades, Africa is going to be behind Asia, probably the most populous continent. The future of the world in many places is here. And we just have to wait for it.
Fellas, thank you very much. We're going to cap this one off over here. And thank you for watching. We really do enjoy your comments, including the ones on it which are critical. We do need that. But yeah, guys, we really appreciate your support also. And we encourage you to continue supporting the Daily Friend Show, and of course the website. And you can do that by becoming a friend of the IRR. That's our crowdfunding campaign. And it's quite simple, really. To become a friend, you just SMS your name to 32823. Someone will give you a call. Terms and conditions to apply, and an SMS will cost you R1. Or alternatively, find us online, irr.org.za/join. And you can sign up a monthly debit order of 90 Rand there. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Quick reminder, the show comes out on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. However, there is going to be a slight change next week. I'll make that announcement on Monday. We're just changing how we order our shows, but nonetheless, you can find our shows still on the Iono website, iono.fm, and just search IRR or Institute of Race Relations, or alternatively on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Big Daddy Liberty, or the South African Institute of Race Relations YouTube channel. But simplify the whole thing. Find us on the Daily Friend website. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week with some new formats.